Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Joey Thomas, entrepreneur and small business educator here with 17 Hats. So today we have a really interesting topic and something I think that we can all get something from, because in an ideal and perfect world, every lead that comes through the door would be excellent, right? They would have the perfect budget, the perfect attitude, and would be a lifelong repeat customer who refers a ton of people your way. But I think we can all agree that this isn't always the case. As a matter of fact, when we let one or two non-ideal clients, and I'll explain what I mean by that here in a minute, that if we let some people slip through that we probably shouldn't have worked with, it can turn into a nightmare. And it's very, very hard to correct. Okay, so the challenge is, how do we identify if a potential lead is a good fit before we get in too deep? How do we identify red flags for new leads? So let me stop here and say, we won't always work with the perfect so-called ideal client, but there are some things that I think matter a little bit more, or can be a little bit more of a challenge for both sides of the deal to follow through on, right? It's going to be a little bit more challenge for me to deliver in the way that I'd like to deliver, both in effort, attitude, and the quality of the final service or product. But how do we identify those red flags? So in today's quick little video, I want to just run through 7 different areas that we should be aware of, or 7 red flags to identify any potential issues that might arise. Okay, so number 1, your new lead has tried using someone else that does what you do, but had issues with them. Now that could happen, and it's true that the last person they tried to work with may have failed them, but there's an equal chance that it wasn't someone else's problem. And if this new lead is telling you about it, there's a chance it also could be a little manipulative. So you have to be aware that if they spend time complaining about their previous experience, you might view that as a red flag, as it does show a lack of professionalism and maturity with that client. So number 1, first red flag is your new lead complaining about a previous experience. All right, so the second red flag is bad communication. Okay, they just might be a poor communicator, and this could be detrimental to the business relationship. So what does that look like? Let's just give an example. Let's say that you are just scheduling a meeting with this new potential lead. And while you're trying to schedule a meeting, even though you've sent out a scheduling link, they start texting you several times back to back to back, even before you have a chance to respond. And sometimes these messages come at odd hours, after 5, latest 7, 8, 9, even 10 o'clock at night. I've had clients send me messages at 11:30 p.m. And say, "So sorry, I'm sending you a late message." That's a red flag. There are some boundary issues there that you might want to think about, right? Another form of bad communication is that they could always be changing the scope of the project because they're just formulating what their real needs are as they speak to you and not before, which is okay to a certain extent. When you're initially talking about and collaborating on a project or a service, it's usual to figure that out as you're talking. But once it's set, and there are certain people who continuously change the scope of the project, that's another red flag, because it just shows that they're having a hard time committing to a process or a product or a service. Another example of this is that they seem to be constantly distracted while you're on a phone call or you're talking in person or on a video call. This can lead to poor understanding on both sides, and both sides could misinterpret what the real needs are. So if you find that they're constantly distracted and not able to focus in on your conversation, that could be a red flag. Okay. Another red flag is when they don't value what you value and those values don't align with yours. Let's just say you're an event planner and you have a certain way that you like to run these events, a certain system, a certain way you like to communicate, a certain way that fits your brand and fits your way of doing business, even when it comes to contracts or agreements and things like that. When you have people that are trying to get you to change what you do, or they don't value, let's say, family time when you have created a boundary like I just talked about, it's probably not a good idea to get in too deep, because you can usually tell very early in a client relationship if their values line up with yours. Okay, another red flag is around money. When there's two things that come up really early, when they're hyper focused on getting a discount from you, or they have an irrational small budget and they're trying to make you do it by giving you some kind of guilt trip or trying to convince you that there's a lot of referrals coming your way and so you should be working with them. See, many times a potential client may come in without a real frame of reference on what a budget should be for professional quality work. That's completely fine. You know, most people don't really understand it until they get a chance to talk to you and be educated a little bit. But that's not what I'm talking about. There are some that are intent, and no matter what you communicate, that they have a budget in mind and you have to meet it no matter the type of service you provide. That's a red flag. But it's not about having a small budget. So don't get me wrong. Small budgets are perfectly fine as long as the workload and expectations are in line with the budget. See, as much as they may not be able to afford you, you may not be able to afford the time and expense you have to put into the project, and that's going to lead to dissatisfaction on both sides. So if neither one of you can afford to be in this situation, you should probably back out of it. Major red flag, okay? Another red flag is unrealistic expectations. Setting realistic expectations are key, but the client accepting those expectations are even more important. For example, if a real estate client has a laundry list of must-haves a mile long, it's reasonable to expect that it could take a little time to find that perfect space or home or office, right? And sometimes the perfect home, even if found, may not be in the budget that they hoped for. So it goes without saying that clear expectations and the acceptance of those and the limitations that are there in those expectations are key in any kind of successful business relationship. Okay. And the sixth one, an unorganized client is a red flag. If you find that your clients are canceling several meetings on you, they're missing meetings, they won't respond to messages in a timely manner, they seem to be missing payments often, and due to their lack of organization, they simply don't respect your schedule. Another major red flag, and may not be the effort that it takes to put into a disorganized client, okay? And finally, number 7, asking to restructure agreements and contracts from the get-go. Now, is amending a contract always a red flag? No, it's not. Not always, especially when the change in the contract may actually make sense and benefit both parties. But when a potential client tries to delay the process of signing an agreement or requests several changes, that might indicate the nature of the relationship moving forward. If it doesn't benefit both parties, it's probably not a good idea to change those agreements and contracts on a whim. It's important to be consistent along all your clients, right? Because I use 17 Hats to do my contracts. It's a really easy process because I have a template that goes in, and when they accept the quote, an invoice pops up and a contract pops up, and it's so easy. It's not seamless when I have to go in and I have to make those changes. Now, it's easy enough to do, right? It's easy enough to edit one of your contracts or documents in 17 Hats, but it's not really fair to all the other clients who accepted your previous agreement. And you don't want to create confusion in the marketplace. So to me, when you start making those changes, it just crosses a business boundary. And it just may not be worth the time or the effort or even the potential profits, because the drawbacks might be a lot worse. So guys, those were 7 categories of red flags just to look out for in dealing with a new client. I know it's exciting to get a new client, but as we've all probably dealt with already, it's not always the wisest thing to get 100% of people that knock on our door. And if you are getting 100% of people, kudos to you. But I can almost guarantee that it's not always going to be a great situation. So keep these things in mind. And our goal here at 17 Hats is really just to help organize the chaos, right? And we want you to have a certain level of peace and clarity in what you guys do. So use the comments. If you've ever seen any red flags and you didn't listen to your gut, use those comments and share those experiences with us. We would love to talk to you about it. And once again, guys, I appreciate you taking the time watching these videos, and I will be back with a lot more of these videos here in the future. Subscribe to our 17 Hats channel, like this video, and hit that bell for notifications. I will talk to you guys soon.